In this video, we'll be upgrading the spring and replacing the shock fluid on a KLR650 shock. These same steps can be used for both the older 1987 to 2007 KLR650s, along with the newer 2008 to current KLR650s. If you're looking to completely rebuild your KLR650 shock, we've got a complete instructional video demonstrating how to properly disassemble your shock and replace your shock head dust seal and oil seal, and then how to reassemble it. You can simply click on the link in the bottom right hand corner to view this complete rebuild video. For most adventure riders, the stock KLR shock spring is too soft. If you're a heavier rider or plan on running panniers or additional gear and luggage, a heavier spring is highly recommended. Rocky Mountain ATV MC offers a variety of different spring options to suit your needs. So we'll start by putting on some safety glasses and then get right into removing the shock from the bike by first loosening and removing the bottom linkage nut. We'll wait to pull this bolt till a little later and move up to the left side of the bike, or we'll have to slide down the breather hose clamp and pull that hose to gain access to the top shock bolt. When you've done that, go ahead and break that bolt loose. And then remove it. With the top bolt removed, we can go back down to the linkage. Pull that linkage arm bolt out that we pulled the nut off of earlier. Swing that out of the way. And now all that's holding the shock on is the bottom shock bolt. Loosen and remove that. And then carefully pull the shock out from the bottom. It's a good idea to make sure the shock is clean before you start working on it. And we're going to start by getting access to the valve stem so we can let the nitrogen out. And this step is only necessary if you're replacing the shock fluid. Remember, if you're only changing the shock spring, there isn't any reason to let the nitrogen out. You'll notice there's a small plastic cap that covers the valve stem to the shock. This can be a pain to remove, but we found that cutting a small slit in the cap, like you see here, will give you something to pry against with the screwdriver and allow you to easily remove this cap. Now we need to remove any pressure from inside the shock, and you'll want to tip the shock up to keep any oil from spraying out. Again, this step is only necessary if you're replacing the shock fluid. With all the nitrogen out of the shock, we can move on to compressing the spring. For this we need a spring compressor, and Rocky Mountain's got a couple different options to choose from. We're going to be using the Tuss spring compressor for this shock. So to start, we're going to turn up the preload adjuster, and we'll take it as high as it'll go to make sure we grab as many coils of the spring as we can. So now we'll go ahead and install a tool onto each side of the spring, and again the goal is to grab as many coils as you can. Just snug that down for now, and we'll install the other side. Once you have them both in place, we'll start tightening each side down. We're using a crescent wrench to hold the body, and then a 17mm ratchet wrench to tighten the tool. You can also use the 3/8 drive ratchet. You want to try and pull the spring down evenly on each side. When you have it compressed a little bit, go ahead and back out the preload adjuster to loosen up the spring. We're also going to slide the bump stop down the shock shaft, and then to remove the spring we need to remove the spring retainer. The spring needs to be compressed enough to drop the retainer down enough to slide over the shock shaft. As you can see, we have a little bit more to go. So we'll continue compressing the spring so we've got enough room to slide that retainer off. Now with the retainer removed, we can back bolt the clamps off and remove those. And now you can slide that spring right off, and from here we'll move into replacing the oil in the shock. To do that, using a 10mm T-handle, remove that valve stem. It's a good idea to inspect the sealing O-ring on this valve stem while you have it removed. Now we'll go ahead and dump that dirty old oil out. When you get all that old oil out, you can pour some fresh oil in and push it through its stroke a few times, and then pour that oil out to flush out the shock a little bit. We're then going to measure 140 milliliters of new shock fluid and then carefully pour that into the shock. Kawasaki doesn't specify which weight shock fluid to use, but with the heavier spring, the shock is going to rebound a little faster, so we chose to run a 10 weight shock fluid in this shock. If you chose to stick with the stock spring, using a 5 weight shock fluid is probably okay. Once you've poured it all in, reinstall the valve stem. Be sure to start it by hand to ensure you don't accidentally cross thread it. Then finish tightening it with the 10mm T-handle. And now we're ready to install our new spring. So with the shock and a vise again, we'll slide the new spring down into place. And then we're going to attach the spring compressors onto the new spring and begin tightening them down. Again, we need to tighten these until we have enough room to reinstall the spring retainer. When you've tightened them enough, slide that retainer into place, then you can begin loosening the spring clamps. You'll want to loosen them evenly and make sure the retainer seats correctly into place. Then you can go ahead and remove both those clamps. Now your shock is completely assembled. So with the install of a heavier shock spring, the shock's going to want to rebound faster, so you may need to adjust the rebound a little bit. The way you do this is remove the rebound adjuster cap, and you can see the adjuster. You have 4 rebound settings starting at 1. If you turn it, you can see the 2. Turn it again, you see 3. And then finally 4. If you turn it again, you're back to 1. 1 being the fastest and 4 being the slowest. So with this new spring, we're going to try setting it at 2 or even 3 and see how it feels. You can always adjust this later when the shock's on the bike. The 2008 and newer models have a click type rebound adjuster like you see here. These have a few more settings than the older style that we just showed you. You just back it out to speed it up or turn it in to slow it down. The next thing we like to do is put a little air in the shock and check for any leaks around the valve stem. So using a hand pump, go ahead and fill it with about 15 psi, and then we'll spray a little WD around the valve stem and look closely for any small bubbles that would indicate a leak. As you can see, this O-ring has a small leak, so we're going to have to pull this valve stem out again and replace the O-ring. Since this O-ring isn't available through the OEM schematics for the KLR650, we did some research and found an OEM Honda O-ring that fits perfectly. So here's the part number for the O-ring. If you need to, you can call in and have one of our friendly customer service reps add one to your order. And the last thing to do is fill the shock with nitrogen. For this, you'll need to take your shock to a trained and certified technician that can properly fill it. Most motorcycle shops are set up to do this and would be happy to fill it for a nominal fee. Kawasaki calls for 140 psi. So once your shock has been filled with nitrogen, you can go ahead and reinstall it on the bike and you're ready to ride. Rocky Mountain ATV MC has everything to fill your adventure bike needs. Thanks for watching, we'll see you out on the trail.